My best friend's new boyfriend is my ex who cheated on me, and she has no idea. I honestly don't even know where to begin with this nightmare situation I'm in. The past few days have been an absolute blur, and I'm completely torn between loyalty to my oldest friend and protecting her from the biggest mistake of her life. Some background: my best friend, let's call her Christy, and I have been inseparable since middle school. We grew up in a smallish town about 2 hours from the city. 3 years ago, I moved to the city for a job opportunity that I couldn't pass up. During that time, Christy and I stayed in touch, but admittedly not as much as we used to. We'd text occasionally and video chat maybe once a month, but both of us were busy with our own lives. I was building my career, and she was finishing her master's degree. While living in the city, I met Theo. We dated for almost 2.5 years, and for the first year and a half, I genuinely thought he was the one. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to care deeply about me and our relationship. I introduced him to my family, we talked about our future together, and I was completely in love with him. I even considered asking Christy to be my maid of honor someday. Then I discovered he'd been cheating on me. Not just a one-time mistake, which would have been bad enough, but with multiple women throughout our entire relationship. I found messages on his phone, and there were at least 3 different women he was seeing regularly behind my back, sending them the same romantic messages he sent me, taking them to the same restaurants, even giving us all identical jewelry. When I confronted him, he gaslighted me, claiming I was crazy and paranoid, but I had screenshots of everything. The breakup was messy and devastating. I spiraled into depression for months. After the breakup, I struggled to stay in the city. Everything reminded me of Theo and our relationship. 6 months ago, I decided to move back to my hometown to be closer to family and start fresh. It felt like the right decision, and reconnecting with Christy was an unexpected bonus. Since I've been back, we've fallen right back into our old friendship like no time had passed. It's been the one bright spot in my recovery. For the past 2 months, Christy has been gushing about this amazing new guy she's been seeing. She kept saying how he was different from anyone she dated before, how he really understands her, and how he moved to town recently, so they're both experiencing the town as adults together. She's been oddly secretive about him though, not showing me any pictures or letting me meet him, which I thought was strange, but figured she was just being cautious after her last relationship ended badly. Last night, Christy finally invited me to dinner to meet her new boyfriend. I was genuinely excited for her because she sounded so happy. We agreed to meet at this new restaurant downtown. I got there first and was checking my phone when I heard Christy call my name. I looked up and literally felt my blood turn to ice. Standing next to her with his arm around her waist was Theo, my Theo, the same man who destroyed me, who I hadn't seen or spoken to in over a year. The look on his face when he saw me was just as shocked as mine. I could tell he hadn't expected to see me there. I just sat there, completely frozen, as Christy excitedly introduced us as if we were strangers. Theo reached out to shake my hand, saying it was nice to meet me, with this weird, tight smile. I honestly don't know how I didn't scream or throw up right there. Somehow, I made it through dinner. I don't remember eating anything. Theo spent the entire time playing the perfect boyfriend, being attentive to Christy, asking me polite questions about myself as if he hadn't lived with me for over a year, and occasionally shooting me these panicked looks when Christy wasn't watching. Christy kept saying how they met at a coffee shop downtown by total coincidence and how they just clicked immediately. When Christy went to the bathroom, Theo immediately leaned across the table and whispered that if I said anything to her, no one would believe me and I would just look like a psycho ex. He said he's changed and that what we had wasn't serious, despite the fact that we merged our lives together for a moment in time. Then he put on his charming smile again, the second Christy returned. After dinner, I made an excuse about not feeling well and left as quickly as possible. I drove home in a complete daze and have been having panic attacks on and off ever since. I haven't responded to any of Christy's texts asking if I'm okay and saying how much she hopes I liked Theo. I don't know what to do. Theo is clearly playing some kind of sick game. This can't possibly be a coincidence. He moved to my hometown after our breakup and specifically sought out my best friend. I'm terrified of telling Christy the truth because 1. I'm not sure she'll believe me. 2. Theo is incredibly convincing and manipulative. If she doesn't believe me, I could lose my best friend. And 3. Even if she does believe me, finding out the truth will absolutely crush her. At the same time, I can't just say nothing and watch my best friend fall for the same man who lied to me for years. She deserves to know who she's really dating. What should I do? Has anyone ever been in a similar situation? I'm completely lost. Update 1. 1 week later. First, thank you to everyone for your advice and support on my original post. This past week has been one of the most stressful of my life, and I'm honestly still struggling. After reading your comments, I decided I needed to tell Christy the truth, regardless of the consequences. I asked her to meet me for coffee, just the two of us. When we met up, I tried to approach the subject as gently as possible. I started by asking her how she and Theo met, and the story she told made my stomach turn. Apparently, he had approached her at a local coffee shop, mentioning that he was new in town and asking for recommendations. According to Christy, he specifically brought up my name, saying he thought he might have met me briefly in the city at some point, but couldn't remember where. This made me suspect that he might have known about Christy and deliberately sought her out, which was extremely unsettling. I took a deep breath and told Christy everything. I showed her old photos of Theo and me together that I still had on my phone, text messages from our relationship, and even the necklace he had given me for our anniversary, which I'd kept meaning to sell but never got around to it. I explained how he had cheated with multiple women and gaslighted me when confronted. Her reaction was worse than I imagined. At first, she was completely silent, just staring at the photos with this shocked expression. Then she started questioning everything. Maybe it was just someone who looked like him, maybe I was confused. When I showed her undeniable proof, she switched to anger, accusing me of making it all up because I was jealous of her happiness. She said if it was true, why hadn't I mentioned dating someone seriously in the city during our calls? I tried explaining that after the breakup, it was too painful to talk about, and by the time I moved back home, I was trying to move on with my life. But she wasn't listening. She stormed out of the coffee shop saying she needed time to think. For the next 2 days, she didn't respond to any of my texts or calls. Then she finally messaged me saying she had spoken to Theo, and he had explained everything. According to him, we had only dated casually for a few months, not 2.5 years. I had become obsessed with him, and when he tried to break it off, I supposedly threatened to ruin his life. She said he showed her texts that proved I was unstable. I was floored. Those texts had to be completely fabricated. I tried to explain this to Christy, but she said she needed space from both of us to figure things out. She ended the message saying she valued our friendship but wasn't sure she could trust me anymore. I was devastated, but at least thought she might be reconsidering her relationship with Theo. That changed yesterday. I was grabbing takeout from a restaurant on the other side of town, a place Christy and I never go to. As I was waiting for my order, I glanced over at a corner table and saw them. Christy and Theo were having dinner together, looking completely intimate and happy. When she saw me, the color drained from her face. She quickly looked away and pretended not to see me. I left immediately, not even waiting for my food. I texted her when I got home, simply asking why she lied about needing space when she was clearly still seeing him. She finally called me this morning and admitted they never actually broke up. She said Theo convinced her that I was trying to sabotage their relationship out of jealousy, and they decided to continue dating in secret until I calmed down. She actually apologized for lying, but said I didn't give her a choice by forcing her to choose between us. During this conversation, something else came up that made my blood run cold. Christy mentioned that one of the things that made her and Theo connect so deeply was that he had opened up to her about his toxic ex, who had trust issues and was extremely jealous and controlling. She said he'd been traumatized by this relationship, and she felt special that he trusted her enough to be vulnerable about it. I realized with horror that he had been using Christy as a confidant about our relationship, twisting everything to make himself the victim, all while not mentioning that the crazy ex was actually her best friend. He had been using these altered stories of our relationship as a way to get close to her from the very beginning. When I pointed this out, she got defensive again and said I was twisting things. She ended the call saying she still needed space and would reach out when she was ready. I'm completely heartbroken. I've lost my best friend to the man who already broke my heart once, and there's nothing I can do about it. I've considered reaching out to our mutual friends to see if they can talk some sense into her, but I'm afraid of coming across as the crazy ex Theo has painted me to be. I'm also genuinely worried about Christy. If Theo could lie to me for years, what is he doing to her now? Is this all some twisted revenge plot against me? Or is he just so narcissistic that he's enjoying the drama? I'll update again if anything changes, but right now I feel completely helpless. Update 2, 3 weeks later. I wish I had better news to share, but things have gone from bad to worse. The past few weeks have been a complete nightmare. After my last update, I decided to take a step back from the situation with Christy and Theo. I figured giving her some space might help her see things more clearly on her own. I was wrong. About a week after our phone call, I ran into our mutual friend Alex at the grocery store. Alex mentioned that Christy had been telling everyone a completely different version of events. According to her, I had been stalking Theo since he moved to town because I couldn't accept that our brief fling was over, and now I was trying to sabotage her relationship out of jealousy. She'd even shown people texts supposedly from me that were aggressive and threatening. I was shocked. I showed Alex the real text exchanges between Christy and me, which were nothing like what she was describing. Alex admitted that something seemed off about the whole situation and had been suspicious of Theo from the beginning. Apparently, Theo had been asking very specific questions about me for weeks before, coincidentally, meeting Christy at that coffee shop. During this conversation, Alex mentioned something that made me pause. Apparently, Theo had recently told people he had researched job opportunities in our hometown because he was looking for a change of pace from city life. This seemed oddly coincidental, and I wondered if there was more to the story. I was still processing this information when I got home and checked social media. Christy had posted photos of her and Theo together for the first time, officially announcing their relationship. The caption read, "Sometimes people come into your life exactly when you need them. So grateful for this man who sees the real me." The irony was painful. What was even more disturbing were the comments. Several people I considered friends were gushing about what a perfect couple they were, including people who knew about my history with Theo. When I messaged one of them privately, she admitted she knew they were dating in secret and had been helping cover for them, saying it wasn't her place to get involved, but she hoped we could work things out. I felt completely betrayed all over again, not just by Christy, but by our entire friend group. Things escalated further when I received a late-night text from an unknown number. It was a woman named Rachel who said she had been dating Theo for the past month. She had seen Christy's social media post and was shocked to discover he had a girlfriend, as he had told her he was single. She found me through some old photos Theo had accidentally left visible on his Instagram, photos of him and me that he hadn't completely deleted. Rachel and I met for coffee the next day, and she showed me recent texts and photos proving she and Theo had indeed been seeing each other. She was just as angry and hurt as I was. We decided to compare notes and discovered disturbing patterns. He had used almost identical opening lines with all three of us when we first met. He had taken Rachel to many of the same chain restaurants where he took me and Christy. He had even given her a similar necklace to the one he gave me. Yes, I've pawned it since the last update. After meeting with Rachel, I knew I had to try one more time to make Christy see the truth. I asked Rachel if I could share her story and evidence with Christy, and she agreed. I messaged Christy asking to meet urgently, saying I had important information to share. She ignored me. I finally resorted to sending her screenshots of my conversation conversation with Rachel, including photos proving Theo was cheating on her. Christy's response was to block me on all platforms. I was at a complete loss until 2 nights ago when my doorbell rang at nearly midnight. It was Christy, crying hysterically. She had finally confronted Theo with the evidence I sent, and his reaction had terrified her. Instead of denying it or apologizing, he became enraged, calling her pathetic for believing obvious Photoshop and telling her that her psycho friend would say anything to tear them apart. When she tried to leave his apartment, he blocked the door and shouted at her for nearly an hour before she managed to leave. As she calmed down, Christy finally told me everything. Theo had been manipulating her from the start. He had specifically mentioned my name during their first meeting, claiming he thought he might know me from somewhere, then gradually extracted information about our friendship. He had portrayed himself as the victim of a controlling ex, me, sharing just enough details about our relationship that Christy would recognize the parallels once the truth came out, but twisted to paint himself as the wronged party. When I first exposed the truth about Theo, he convinced her I was lying by showing her fabricated text exchanges and photos that had been selectively edited. He told her I had been obsessed with him since our breakup and would do anything to keep him from being happy, even destroying her relationship. The most disturbing part was when Christy admitted Theo had encouraged her to continue the relationship in secret, claiming it was romantic to have something that was just theirs, but really using it to isolate her from me and our friends. He had been turning her against me for months, using my reactions as proof of my instability. After her confrontation with Theo, Christy had gone to Rachel, who confirmed everything. They discovered Theo had been dating at least 2 other women simultaneously as well. I was relieved Christy finally knew the truth, but also angry that it took so much damage for her to believe me. When I asked why she hadn't trusted me from the beginning, she broke down again, that I had only ever shared with him during our relationship. He knew exactly which buttons to push to make his lies about me seem credible to Christy. After Christy left, I felt a mix of vindication and exhaustion. I'm glad the truth is finally out, but so much damage has been done to our friendship that I'm not sure it can be repaired. This morning, I woke up to dozens of threatening messages from Theo, blaming me for ruining his life and promising I would regret interfering. I've saved all the messages and am looking into the process of getting a restraining order. Christy has also received similar threats and is staying with her parents for now. She's called me several times to apologize, but I'm still too hurt to have a real conversation about everything. I know I should be relieved that this nightmare might finally be ending, but I honestly just feel hollow. I've lost over a month of my life to this drama, potentially damaged friendships beyond repair, and still have an angry ex who seems intent on making my life miserable. I'll update one more time once things have settled, but right now, I'm just trying to take things one day at a time. The social isolation began so gradually, I almost didn't notice it at first. While Christy was finally coming to terms with Theo's true nature, I was facing a different kind of betrayal, one that was spreading through our entire social circle like a virus. 3 weeks after the confrontation with Christy, I decided to attend Morgan's birthday dinner at our favorite local restaurant. Morgan had been part of our friend group since college, and while she wasn't as close to me as Christy was, we'd always had a good relationship. When I arrived at the restaurant, the awkward silence that fell over the table should have been my first clue. People seemed surprised to see me, exchanging glances as I approached. The seating had been arranged, so the only empty chair was at the far end of the table, isolated from the main conversation. Throughout dinner, whenever I tried to join discussions, they seemed to die out or shift directions. At one point, I went to the bathroom and returned to find everyone laughing at some inside joke that immediately stopped when they saw me. After dessert, I pulled Morgan aside to ask if something was wrong. "Look," she said hesitantly, "I didn't want to get into this tonight, but since you're asking, Theo reached out to me last week. He was really worried about you." "Worried about me?" I repeated, completely confused. "He said you've been having a hard time processing the breakup, especially now that he's with Christy. He mentioned you've been creating alternate versions of your relationship in your head." Morgan wouldn't meet my eyes. "He said you might say some things about him that aren't true, and that we should be supportive but careful." I was stunned. "And you believed him?" "Morgan, you've known me for 10 years. I know, she said quickly, but he seemed so genuinely concerned. He even showed me texts where you apparently threatened him, and Christy confirmed some of it too. It was only when I got home and checked our group chat that I realized I'd been removed. I texted Sarah, another friend, asking what was going on. Her response was like a punch to the gut. "I think you need to get help. We all care about you, but this obsession with Theo isn't healthy." Over the next month, I watched helplessly as my entire social circle slipped away. Invitations stopped coming. Group hangouts happened without me. When I ran into friends at local spots, conversations were brief and uncomfortable. One particularly painful moment came when I saw photos on social media of a weekend trip to the lake house, a tradition our friend group had for years that I hadn't even been told about. The most hurtful part was overhearing 2 former friends at the coffee shop discussing me. Theo says she was like this with her ex before him too. Apparently she can't let relationships go. It's sad, really. They were discussing a fictional ex that Theo had invented. I'd only had 2 serious relationships before him, and both had ended amicably. He was creating an entire false history for me, and people I'd known for years were accepting it without question. By the time Christy finally came to my door that night, admitting Theo had been lying, I had essentially lost my entire local support system. Even after the truth came out, many friends were too embarrassed about believing Theo's lies to properly apologize or rebuild our friendships. The damage was done. The most insidious part of Theo's Theo's manipulation was how he rewrote our shared history. When Christy first confronted him with the photos I'd shown her of us together, he had an explanation for everything that made me sound delusional. The trip to Vermont where he had proposed we move in together? Oh, that was just a group trip with some friends from the city. She always read too much into casual comments. The necklace he gave me for our anniversary with the custom engraving? I felt bad because she was going through a rough time, so I got her a small gift. She's the one who started calling it an anniversary present, even though we were just casually seeing each other. Our shared apartment? I was between places and crashed on her couch for a few weeks. She started telling people we lived together. When I heard these distortions from Christy during one of our cautious coffee meetings after her breakup with Theo, I was speechless. He had taken every significant memory we shared and twisted it into evidence of my apparent instability. The worst part, Christy admitted, is that he had an answer for everything. When I asked why there were so many photos of you two together looking like a couple, he said you were always pushing for pictures and he just went along with it to be nice. When I questioned why his mother knew so much about you if you were just casual, he said you had called her multiple times without his knowledge. Theo had even created a completely fictional narrative about how our relationship ended. According to him, he had gently tried to break things off multiple times, but I would threaten to hurt myself. He claimed the reason he moved to our hometown was to make a clean break from the city, never expecting to run into me again, and was shocked to discover I had followed him here. The most painful revelation came when Christy showed me texts from our mutual friend Taylor. Theo had apparently confided in Taylor about his concerns for me months before, setting the groundwork for his narrative. In the texts, Taylor assured Theo she had always sensed something off about me and recalled conversations where I had seemed obsessive about relationships, conversations that had never happened. For weeks, I found myself doubting my own memories, pulling out old photos and cards to confirm what I knew was true. I even contacted my former therapist in the city, terrified that somehow I had imagined the seriousness of our relationship. This is exactly what he wants, my therapist explained during our emergency video session. Creating enough doubt that you question your own experiences is the ultimate form of control. Even now, months later, I sometimes catch myself second-guessing small details. Did he really say he loved me first? Or did I imagine that? Was the discussion about marriage something I had initiated, or had he brought it up? The certainty I once had about our relationship has been permanently fractured. Later that week, I was finally starting to establish a new routine. I had thrown myself into work, was talking to my therapist again, and was cautiously rebuilding connections with a few friends who had apologized after learning the truth. The local bookstore cafe had become my sanctuary, a place where I could read for hours without running into anyone from the old friend group. That sanctuary was shattered the day I walked in and saw Theo behind the counter, wearing an employee apron and chatting warmly with the owner, Martha, who had always been kind to me. "Oh, you haven't met our new weekend manager?" Martha asked cheerfully when she saw my shocked expression. "Theo's been such a blessing. He's implementing a new inventory system for us." I left without ordering, my safe space now contaminated. Later that week, I discovered Theo had also joined the Downtown Beautification Committee, a volunteer group I'd been part of since moving back. At their monthly meeting, which I skipped after learning he would be there, he apparently suggested a fundraiser almost identical to one I had proposed months earlier. According to the minutes that were emailed out, everyone loved Theo's innovative idea. The final blow came when I learned he had started playing basketball with my coworkers at their weekly game. My team lead, Michael, mentioned it casually. "Your friend Theo joined us last week. Great guy, really good team player." "He's not my friend," I said automatically. Michael gave me an odd look. "Oh, he said you two go way back. Mentioned you might be uncomfortable with him joining because of some misunderstanding, but he hoped you could move past it." I realized with growing horror that Theo was inserting himself into every corner of my life. Each time I abandoned a space to avoid him, he had successfully limited my world a little more. When I tried to explain the truth to Martha at the bookstore, she looked concerned. Not about Theo, but about me. "He mentioned you might say something like this," she said gently. "He told me you have history, and that you didn't take the breakup well. He's been nothing but professional here." The same scenario played out with the beautification committee, my coworkers, and even at my gym, where he suddenly appeared in group classes I regularly attended. Each time I tried to warn someone about him, I discovered he had already laid the groundwork to discredit me. By the 2-month mark, I had essentially become a hermit, working from home whenever possible and limiting my social activities to places I was certain Theo wouldn't be. My apartment had become both sanctuary and prison. Meanwhile, social media showed Theo building a new life in all the places that had once been mine, posting photos with my friends at my favorite restaurants, even adopting a dog from the shelter where I volunteered. The calculated nature of it all became undeniable when Rachel, the woman he had been cheating on Christy with, mentioned something during one of our support group calls. "He asked me so many questions about my favorite places in town," she said. "At the time, I thought he was just being interested in my life, but looking back, he was mapping out my entire routine." Another ex from the city confirmed the same pattern. Before we even had our first official date, he knew my coffee order, my favorite lunch spot, even which yoga studio I went to. I thought it was romantic that he paid such close attention, but now I realize he was just planning. With the threatening texts from Theo continuing, I decided to officially file for a restraining order. The evidence I had collected, including the texts, witness statements, and the pattern of behavior, made a strong case. While waiting for the hearing, I focused on documenting everything and ensuring my own safety. The worst part was knowing this was all by design, a calculated effort to punish me for exposing him, while simultaneously creating the perfect environment for his next victim. Final update, 1 month later. It's been a month since my last last update, and I wanted to provide some closure to this whole ordeal, though I use the term closure very loosely. Things haven't exactly wrapped up neatly with a bow. First, the practical updates. I filed for a restraining order against Theo after he escalated from threatening texts to showing up at my workplace and home unannounced. The hearing was last week, and I had plenty of evidence, including witnesses, texts, and security camera footage from my apartment building. My lawyer was right. The restraining order was granted without much resistance. Theo's lawyer advised him not to contest it, which was probably the smartest move he could have made given the mountain of evidence against him. Christy also filed a police report after Theo wouldn't stop contacting her, but stopped short of requesting a restraining order. She's still processing everything, and feels partly responsible for the situation, which Theo is absolutely using to manipulate her even now. As for our friendship, it's complicated. After the initial shock wore off, we tried to sit down and have an honest conversation about everything that happened. It was one of the most difficult talks I've ever had. Christy apologized repeatedly for not believing me and for the things she said and did while under Theo's influence. She explained that Theo had been so convincing because he used specific knowledge about both of us, intimate details about my past and insecurities from when we were together, and observations about her trust issues from their relationship. He essentially created the perfect storm of manipulation. What hurt the most was learning that even after seeing solid proof of Theo's cheating, part of Christy still wanted to believe him over me. She admitted that it was easier to think I was lying than to accept that she had been so thoroughly deceived. She also confessed that their relationship had moved much faster than she initially let on. They had practically been living together by the time I discovered who he was, which made it harder for her to walk away. I tried to be understanding, but honestly, I'm still angry. While I logically understand how manipulation works and know Theo is an expert at it, emotionally, I can't get past the fact that my oldest friend chose a man she'd known for a few months over me. The trust between us is broken, and I'm not sure if it can be fully repaired. We're taking things slow, we get coffee occasionally and text, but that easy closeness we once had is gone. Maybe it will come back with time, but for now, there's this awkward tension between us that neither of us quite knows how to navigate. As for our mutual friends, that's been another painful revelation. Many have apologized for enabling Christy and Theo's secret relationship, claiming they didn't know the full story. Others have kept their distance, seemingly uncomfortable with the drama. A few have been amazing, especially Alex, who has been a consistent support throughout this whole nightmare. The most surreal development came last week when Theo's ex before me reached out after hearing rumors about what happened. She shared an eerily similar story. Theo had moved to her city specifically to pursue her after seeing her on social media, fabricated a chance meeting, love-bombed her, then began cheating almost immediately. When she caught him, he used the same gaslighting tactics, and most disturbingly, also went after one of her friends after they broke up. It seems this is a pattern he repeats over and over. Several other women have come forward with similar experiences, including one who dated him briefly after he and Christy broke up. We've created a small support group chat, which has been both validating and heartbreaking. It's helped me realize that none of this was my fault, but it's horrifying to see how many lives this one person has disrupted. As for Theo himself, he's apparently moved on to yet another woman, though he still finds time to harass me and Christy intermittently. I've heard he's already considering moving to a new city for a fresh start, likely to find new victims who haven't heard about his history. Throughout all of this, I've been in therapy trying to process not just the recent trauma, but also revisiting the damage from my original relationship with Theo. My therapist pointed out that I never fully dealt with the betrayal and gaslighting from our breakup, which made this recent situation even more triggering. I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've thrown myself into work, started painting again, a hobby I abandoned during my relationship with Theo, and I'm trying to form new friendships that aren't tainted by this experience. It's not easy, and there are still days when I'm overwhelmed by anger or sadness, but they're becoming less frequent. Christy is also in therapy now, working through her own issues. We've had some productive conversations about patterns in our relationships and why we were both vulnerable to someone like Theo. It's been eye-opening to realize how many warning signs we both missed because he was so skilled at distracting us from them. I don't know what the future holds for my friendship with Christy. Part of me wants to forgive her completely and move forward, but another part isn't sure if I can ever fully trust her again. For now, we're just taking it one day at a time. The damage to my social life and community standing has been profound. While a few people have come around after learning the full story, others still avoid me or treat me with a strange mix of pity and suspicion. It's like they can't quite shed the image Theo created of me as unstable and obsessive, even knowing it was a lie. Some friendships simply couldn't recover from the betrayal of believing him over me so easily. What has helped immensely is focusing on creating new connections in spaces Theo hasn't infiltrated. I've joined a painting class 2 towns over and made a few promising new friends who know nothing about the drama. There's something liberating about starting fresh with people who have no preconceived notions about me. If there's one positive outcome from this horrible experience, it's that I'm much more aware of manipulation tactics and trust my instincts more. I ignored so many red flags with Theo because he was charming and persuasive, but I won't make that mistake again. I'll probably still update if anything significant happens with the restraining order or if Theo escalates again, but for now I'm trying to put this chapter behind me and focus on healing. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this ordeal. It helped more than you know to have objective perspectives when I was in the thick of it. Now I'm just hoping for some boring, drama-free months ahead. I think I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime.